Right, so the taxi's just departed, just left us outside Charleston, this farmhouse covered in fuchsia. It's quite windy.
Fuchsia?
Fuchsia, those
Oh
fuchsia
yes,
bushes
they're
everywhere.
lovely, aren't they? And the grandiflora. It's
Is
gorgeous.
that what it's called?
But when you look at the countryside, it's so open,
It is
isn't
open. Oh look, and there's a tractor with hay.
Oh.
We really are in the country now.
Yes.
I can smell the cow dung.
Yes.
It's quite blustery, but it's it's a stunning house, and there's this lake in front. It would be a lovely house to own.
Yes.
Although apparently they didn't have electricity,
Oh, I'm sure they probably didn't. Yeah.
so that meant no hot water.
And a well, perhaps?
Maybe they had a well.
Yeah.
You
For
can
the
imagine
cold,
Vanessa
yeah.
Bell going to her well,
Yeah.
dragging up the water. Yeah. So we can see on our right is the house itself, which is described, I think, as a farmhouse, but is actually, quite substantial.
And it's very compact,
Yeah.
isn't it?
But it's beautiful. It's very...
I like the windows a lot. And it's not crowded at all. There's
No.
lots of space around us, and I really like that. And it's not been spoilt.
No, that's
It's
true.
simple.
Yeah,
it's
it's
very
been
attractive.
sensitively
Yes.
modernised.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go inside
Let's
and get our
go.
tickets.
Let's do it.
I'm Jessie Burton, and I've brought my mum to Charleston, the Bloomsbury home of art and ideas in East Sussex. Are we about to get run over by this tractor? No?
He's coming quite this way. No, he's gone.
Very dangerous to come. Oh, wow, I want it all. Yeah, so we just come into the shop, which is basically full of everything that I want.
It's beautiful,
It's-
isn't it? It
yeah.
has a very nice, warm feel about it.
And it's got loads of pottery and crockery, all painted in the style that Vanessa Bell painted her own. There's loads of books as well about the Bloomsbury group and painting. Oh, and there's Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own, her book, which is very important.
It's very nicely set out, isn't it? These little wooden drawers with little...
Yeah, it makes you want to kind of go and touch everything.
Absolutely.
Hello, we have our national art passes, so we were hoping we could get 2 tickets, please.
We can fit you onto one of our tours.
Thank you.
We have a tour going in at 12 o'clock, and with your National Art Pass, it will be half price for you.
Perfect.
So it will be £7.25 with the National Art Pass. If you were to come on a Sunday, it will be free, but on a weekday, it's half price.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Hi, I'm the author Jessie Burton.
I'm her mum, Linda Burton, and this is Meet Me at the Museum.
Slightly aggressive. You better meet me, otherwise I'm going to kill you. I remember growing up, you would always take me to art exhibitions, galleries, museums. I remember when all the other kids got to go to theme parks, you'd take me to some old house that was like drafty with some old paintings. It was such a cruel childhood. But yeah, I remember you used to take me. Do you know why you did that?
Or probably because we were interested. You know, Daddy's always been interested in art and ceramics, and because it was history as well. Going to houses, National Trust or art museums was really part of the activities. And we went to the National Portrait Gallery, and you did an educational day there. And
I remember that. We did a make-your-own corset course.
Yes.
So we went around looking at all the paintings, and then we drew some. They were sort of 16th century paintings, and then we made a corset.
Yes, and then they taught you to do a dance, didn't they?
I have blocked that out of my mind.
Really?
I don't
No,
remember
no.
that. Because I think as well, like, you were a working mum. Like, you didn't have that much free time in the week. So when
No.
it was half term, but you were a teacher. So like I remember we would do half term activities
Yes.
together. And I do sort of feel like I'm quite grateful to you for dragging me around all those blooming old houses, because without that, I don't know whether I would have developed that love of those historical sites that I wanted to bring back to life in my writing. So we're outside, standing on the doorstep, waiting to be let in.
Yes. It's a lovely, lovely duck pond
Oh, it's
or
a duck
lily.
pond. I called it a
Yes.
lake. That was probably
Well,
a bit grand.
Yes, but it's beautiful.
It is lovely.
Yeah.
Later, we're going to have a chat with the head gardener, Fiona, who's going to tell us more about
Oh,
probably the
that's
pond
good.
and all the flowers, because it is a beautiful outside space, as much as I'm sure it's going to be stunning
and
indoors.
I can see through the arch.
Oh, can you?
There's still flowers,
Yeah.
which is good this
Hanging
time of
on
the year.
before winter comes.
Yeah, yeah.
Knock, knock.
Can we come in? Hello.
Hello. Can we go?
Welcome to Charleston, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Terry, and I'm going to be your guide.
Hi, Terry.
Shall we go? Hi. Let's go into the dining room, which
Okay.
is on your left there.
Here we go.
Have you been here before?
We have been here before. When I was younger, Mum brought me.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's been about 20 years, I think.
Oh, yes, a
Yeah.
good 20
Yeah.
years. Yes, yes.
And now
Do you know I've been here 20 years?
Oh, really?
Maybe I took you round. You might have been one of my first tours.
Yeah. But it really stuck with me as a place.
Yes.
It's like nowhere else, actually. And I really wanted to come back.
Yeah.
And actually being here, you can imagine people living here. That's what I
Exactly.
really appreciate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sitting round this table.
Exactly right. And I always, as a guide, I try to bring it to life to people. And I always say, look at this table here. Imagine you were having dinner here. Who would you be sitting next to in
Yeah.
Vanessa Bell's day? Ian Forster, T.S. Eliot, you know, and all these
Yeah.
lovely names. It's very likely you would be sitting next
Yeah.
to them.
So could you tell us a bit about the background history of Charleston?
Sure. Well, Vanessa Bell, the artist, came here in 1916 during the First World War. She wanted a farmhouse because she was living with a creative group which consisted of Duncan Grant, the artist, and his lover, the writer David Garnett. Now, like a lot of the Bloomsbury group, they were both conscientious objectors, and because of that, they needed to do work of national importance. So they needed to work on the land or something very similar, and they'd been to a tribunal. But Vanessa was really looking for a home that was going to be very informal, away from her very formal life in Bloomsbury and London. So this was always seen as somewhere that was going to be very, very different. The other reason she chose Charleston was because Virginia Woolf, her sister, was living at a house called Asham at the time, which was about 4 or 5 miles away from here. So they were very close, the sisters, so she wanted to be near her as well. But the real feel of Charleston was to actually live within these walls and just enjoy yourself and do exactly what you wanted to do. And if that meant decorating or working or writing or whatever, you just did that. Or you did nothing and just enjoyed conversation.
Well, can I just ask you, you said they had to do work of national importance.
Yeah.
So did they do any farming?
Yes, they did. That's exactly what they did.
Oh, right.
They would work on the surrounding farms as labourers during the day, so they worked very, very hard. And even Vanessa Bell's husband, Clive Bell, was a conscientious objector, but didn't do his work here. He was elsewhere. But by that time, they'd sort of moved on and weren't together anyway, so it was a bit disrupted, the family. But that's what they were doing here. Because at first, Vanessa Bell saw this as a very temporary let, that she'd just spend the summer months with her family and friends, and that included her 2 little boys, Julian and Quentin, who were 6 and 8 in 1916. But it's interesting because they never actually owned the house. They only ever leased it all those years. And I don't think she really anticipated that it was going to be the family home, not until the Second World War. So it was very much a temporary let right up until that point.
It's quite a long let, isn't it?
It is.
From the First World to the Second World War.
Yeah. But they got so used to it and they loved it. And London was becoming increasingly dangerous in 1939. So she thought, well, I've got the lease on Charleston. I'll just make this the permanent home. But what was so interesting was that her husband, who she wasn't with at that point, decided to move in with them. So there's a big change round of the use of different rooms. And it was a very strange dynamic to a certain extent.
Was it, I mean, it's obviously such a place of inspiration and creativity, but was it ever an uncomfortable dynamic because of, you know, different lovers living here and all that sort of thing?
Well, I think we give the impression that it was harmonious. I don't think it was always harmonious, and I'm sure there were tensions. But you have to remember that they, first and foremost, they felt that they were accepting of people's relationships, and a lot of those were very fluid as well.
Yeah.
So it was very much a different way of life here. You could do what you wanted to do, and people accepted it up to a point. But, they were human after all. So, they were going to fall out. There was going to be jealousy. Yeah, they weren't perfect.
Yeah. And
but
if they
tried.
were, they went and turned it into a pot or a painting or a poem.
Yeah, or in someone's book, a character in a book.
Right, yeah, I know that.
Yeah.
So where are we going to go to next?
Shall we go to the garden room?
Yeah.
Which would have been their sitting room.
Lovely.
Follow me. Just down here.
I suppose something that as I've gotten older, I've developed a career as a creative person, and struggled in my 20s to make that happen because we are a normal family who didn't have loads of money to throw around, is that it's actually really hard to pursue a creative career. Yes, you can do hobbies, and actually that's really enjoyable, but as I've got older, I've thought about the Bloomsbury group, and I've, wondered how did they live like this? Yes, they lived bohemian lives. They lived off the land. They repurposed all their clothes and their artifacts. But somewhere, someone had to have some money. So I'm interested to know how that happened, and whether there was anyone in the family who had money.
Yeah. And whether they had sponsorship or whatever it might have
exactly.
been.
Like how they shared the money or because the idea of this place is very romantic, and it is romantic, and I really admire them for pursuing their credo and their artistic way of life. But also artists need to eat, and they need a roof over their head, and they need to pay their bills, and they need hot water and electricity. So how did they do that bit?
Well, I'm hoping that we will see loads of their work.
Right.
I'm really hoping that, because I've been to a lot of places and they say, oh, X lived here and believed in this and so, and you'd think, well, why or how? What is the evidence? And so I'm hoping that this is going to offer that.
Yeah, it'd be really nice if, in every room there's just evidence of their family life and their artistic output.
For
sure.
Yeah. I'm hoping to see evidence of their craft using their hands, perhaps other than painting, because that's something I'm really interested in. And I've always sewn, I've always made something, and the satisfaction of actually making something or repairing something is
it's nice to bring something back from the brink, and rather than throw it in the bin and buy a new one.
A little bit dark down here, I'm afraid, but lots of pictures on the wall.
Proper corridor, this.
But then we come into quite a fresh space.
God. Oh, it's lovely.
And it literally opens out into the garden. And Vanessa Bell would have had those French windows open pretty much all the time, actually.
Oh, it's stunning. So we're in this room, and it's, again, the wallpaper is hand stenciled or stamped. They look like apostrophes, don't they?
Paisley design.
Yeah, or tadpoles.
And this is, again, Second World War. And it looks
really?
very, very modern, doesn't it?
So this, we're looking at a marble fireplace, I suppose.
Which has been painted to look more like marble.
Oh, really?
By Duncan Grant.
So Duncan Grant did a sort of stippling effect to make it look more marbly. And again, above, there's this gorgeous, it's almost like a fresco, I suppose, of two ladies holding a plate between them with a pot of flowers inside. And it's always like layer after layer of story. And there's always something that your eye can rest on. And there's a lovely ceramic lion in the middle. Oh, I like him.
You'd like him, wouldn't you, Jessie?
I know, I do love a lion.
Yeah.
He's Staffordshire, and interestingly enough, the little black necklace was left by the children.
Oh, yeah, he's
so
wearing
it's
a little
another
necklace.
little relic of the past, but a different generation. So that has to stay there.
Yeah.
So the children probably played with it and talked to it when they were young. They used to visit here, which is quite sweet. But in here, they would hang all their best paintings and entertain their friends after dinner.
Yeah.
But it has some of their sort of typically painted furniture, like the tiles. The base for the lamp there is actually a telegraph pole, believe it or not.
Really?
Which they upcycled and made different versions of.
Yeah.
And a little homemade lampshade there out of an old blouse, so a bit of make, do and mend as well.
Yeah.
I'm very interested in handcrafts, and so I've done a lot of sewing. I'm looking at the cushions as well. I mean, they're quite dynamic, aren't they?
She's literally, this morning, she came off the train with 2 cushion covers for me made from old curtains. So you're very good at that.
Yeah. But I've moved on to spinning.
Oh,
yeah.
sounds
not in the gym, the spinning wheel.
No, it still sounds very difficult. This is some of Vanessa Bell's knitting underneath.
Oh, yes.
Oh, wow.
It's been salvaged there.
Oh, right.
Might be interested in that.
I think you'd fit in here, Mum.
I think, yes.
I can see you in that chair.
Yeah, it's a really cosy looking chair, isn't it?
Yeah.
That was Vanessa Bell's favourite chair.
Oh, really?
Because I suppose when you sit there, you can look out, you
Yeah,
can see
exactly.
the garden.
It's
Exactly.
beautiful.
You're such a creative person. I don't know anyone like you who can make things from nothing. You make curtains for me in the house. All the curtains in my house are handmade by you. The socks that are on your feet right now, you've knitted. You do all these amazing courses and you have such enthusiasm for things. And I'm grateful to you for taking me on those places when I was little because, yes, I wanted to go to Chessington World of Adventures and yes.
And you did.
I did finally on my own steam. I mean,
But
no
not with
thanks to
me.
you.
No,
you didn't
no
take
thanks
me.
to me, no.
But anyway,
Yeah, yeah.
regardless of that, I think it's nice for us to be back in a place where, one of the places we visited together.
Yes, yes.
And a place that does celebrate all that handmade, self-initiative, recycling, repurposing, appreciation of things.
Yeah, and I think that they're emphasising it more here. The feeling that this is where everybody lived, and there's so much more information given, I think,
Than last
time.
Yeah.
So I really feel it's alive.
So is it correct that this is the room where Vanessa Bell broke the news to her daughter Angelica that the man that she thought was her father was not in fact her biological father?
Yeah, that is correct, because she'd been brought up to think that Clive Bell was her father, when in fact a lot of people did know or suspected it was Duncan Grant, including Angelica herself. But she had to wait till she was 17 to be told the truth.
That is,
And she was very close to Duncan. It wasn't the fact that it was Duncan that was her father, it was the fact they'd lied to her that hurt so very much. But it was in this room.
Yeah. And I mean, Clive Bell was a wealthy man, and was there some kind of motive for Vanessa to sort of make sure that there was an inheritance for her daughter to be attached to the man who had wealth?
Yes, I think there was some of that in it because his parents were quite wealthy. And I think the common assumption is that all the Bloomsbury group were very wealthy because they had servants, etc. But in fact, they lived quite frugally and didn't have an awful lot of money. So they did rely on Clive Bell's parents quite a bit. So obviously, there are contradictions with these people. On one hand, they were very honest and bohemian. And on the other, they wanted to keep the fact that Angelica didn't, she was born out of marriage, and what would happen to her later?
The pressures of society's judgment
Very much
and that
so.
sort of thing.
Yes, although they didn't care about it in other respects.
But that's something that, carries on, isn't it? That, artists still need to eat and pay the bills and put a roof over their head, and money is still an issue, and you do need to have money. And sometimes, I don't know, nowadays there are people who can't necessarily pursue their creative dreams because they can't afford it. So
Yes.
I understand the pragmatism of Vanessa Bell wanting to make sure that there was some financial support.
Who gets to make art?
Yes.
Who gets to enjoy more free time in their week, in their month, in their year to create, to develop those talents and skills? And I think the bottom line is, in this day and age, with art GCSE, music GCSE, all that stuff
all out.
And also just, the amount of money it costs to study or to sort of, live, like basic living standards. These people represent not the norm. They were in a rarefied environment. Virginia and Vanessa's
And I think
father and mother were upper class.
They
had
were
money.
in their prime, weren't they? Really, to do this work, this creative work that we've seen.
And I mean, please don't get me wrong. That I think that they were creative people who were always working right up until the day they died, and I'm grateful to them, and I'm grateful to that. But I just think it has to be mentioned that yes, they sponsored young artists, and yes, there was that outreach, but not like...
No.
I don't know how far those tentacles stretched. Like
Yes,
when we learned that Vanessa decided, okay, war's breaking out, I'm going to get out of London. Not everyone could get out of London.
No, I didn't even...
You were born in the Blitz. You didn't get to come out of London,
no,
did
we
you?
didn't. No, we sat under the table in Clapham.
And you've been there ever since.
Well, we're just leaving the garden room, and as you can see there's a self-portrait of Vanessa Bell painted a couple of years before she died in the attic right at the top of the house. And it's quite a sad portrait there. You can see her in her straw hat.
Yes,
She looks like her sister,
she's contemplating as well, I think.
Yes.
maybe contemplating the end.
It was a sad
depressing,
time.
sorry.
It was a sad time for her, though.
Yeah. Well, she lost one of her sons, didn't she, in the Spanish Civil War?
Yes. That was in 1937. And then after that, the only person she would see for some time was Virginia Woolf, her sister. And of course, she took her life in 1941. So it was and she'd lost Roger Fry. He died suddenly. So a lot of her family and loved ones died.
And Vanessa died when?
1961,
Yes.
at the age of 81.
Wow, she did last, like
Yes.
20 more years after Virginia.
So we're going into Vanessa's bedroom, well, her later bedroom actually, because this was actually a store cupboard which had to be gutted out for her when her husband took over her bedroom upstairs and turned it into his library in 1939 when he moved in.
He just took that choice, did he?
He did. That was his bedroom, that was the end of it.
Right.
But of course he did pay for heating and hot water and a telephone when he
Okay.
moved in, so that's
We'll
probably
forgive
why. But we have the ensuite here.
Oh, lovely.
Height of luxury.
So this bath has got the most gorgeous panelling, sort of divided into three, like a mint green with these sort of orange circles with a sort of floral motif in the middle and columns. Everything is just always detailed and designed.
And
it's
look
amazing.
at the cupboard there as well. Is
That was actually painted by Angelica.
Oh, really?
Yes, that's one of her cupboards.
When she was young? Or...
Yes, when she was quite young.
Yeah. And so were they quite happy for Angelica to just paint when she wanted to?
Very much so.
That reminds me a bit when I was about 15, I decorated the entire ceiling with silver pen and wrote all over.
Very attractive.
She painted over it. I left
Well,
home.
eventually, after about 25 years we lived with this.
It was good. There were stars and lyrics and William Blake poetry.
Yes, all hanging down the cornice, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah. And it was a shame to take it away, but I thought, no. I couldn't believe that this happened. That I just came home and there it all was.
Well, that's why I like this place, because there's this, the children were allowed to do it.
Jessie sort of does it in her own house, really.
Well,
good.
So there we go.
Well, I do it now, yeah.
Yes, once you start, you can't stop.
No,
can you?
exactly.
No.
Did Virginia Woolf ever write anything here?
I think she did. I mean, there was certainly evidence that she stayed here a lot, and I would imagine as they sort of sat out in the garden or discussed things, I'm sure she got ideas for books and you know, plot lines and what have you from characters.
Yeah, it's a meditative space. I can
It
imagine,
is, isn't it?
coming here and,
Yes.
and letting your sort of thoughts come in. I mean, I think as a writer, I'm often considering the space I'm in and, you know, whether spaces are conducive to creativity. And I most of the time I can write anywhere, but I do have my own writing shed. Mm-hmm. And I think about this house and I think, yeah, it'd be very nice to come here and just wake up, look at the garden. And I mean, I don't know if it necessarily generates more thought, but it's just more conducive, I think.
Yes.
It's more peaceful.
Well, we're going into the studio, which was built in 1925, literally to the side of the very old farmhouse, which is thought to be 16th century. So we're going to walk towards these double doors here, and it's going to be a lot brighter, so
Get ready.
beware. There we are.
Wow. Oh, the ceiling just suddenly shoots up. It's like double the height. So we're in a very light-filled, much larger room than Vanessa's bedroom. Every surface has been painted. There are murals on the walls.
designs on the walls. There's a lovely, quite high fireplace with 2 nudes either side, with a bowl of fishes in the middle painted above the top of the fireplace. The fireplace is tiled. There's a chaise longue in the corner, and above that a giant mirror.
And a beautiful cabinet full of lovely porcelain.
Yeah, hand painted by the looks of it.
Yes.
And then these big windows that look up to the sky, perfect for painting conditions to get all that natural light. Who's this on the easel behind you?
Let me introduce you. This is Tony Anzaretti, and he was often used as a Bloomsbury model by all the artists. You go to a Bloomsbury-inspired exhibition, chances are you'll see him nude or otherwise. This is by Duncan Grant, and we're seeing a very well-proportioned young man with everything showing, really, and a full portrait, shall we say. And some years ago, I had some of his distant relatives visit here. Apparently all the men became muscle men, Mr. Atlas type thing.
And did Vanessa come here daily to paint?
Funnily enough, she preferred the attic studio.
Oh, right.
So I do tend to think of this as Duncan Grant's space, particularly as he was here and he was very elderly at the end of his life, living here alone.
Couldn't get up the stairs.
Couldn't get up the stairs, didn't really need to, because he had Vanessa Bell's bedroom on hand.
That's so interesting to me that she preferred the attic, because I'm obsessed with women in attics ever since, reading about Bertha Mason in the attic in Jane Eyre. And in my novel, The Muse, where there's a woman who's a painter, she prefers the attic too. There's something about being away, isn't there? Detached from everything.
You're absolutely right, because we used to go up there. We don't anymore because the stairs are too rickety, so it's unsafe to take people up there. And there's very little up there except some of her painted walls. But you can see out there. But I would say it is so atmospheric up there. Really? It gives you goose pimples.
Really? It's like a room with a view.
It is a room with a view. It's beautiful, and you can see what she would have seen and just wonder what she would have thought when she was up there.
It's so interesting that it is more bare. It's like the interior world she was painting was more vivid. She didn't need, the rest of the house is covered with beautiful objects, but perhaps when she was working, she just needed a sense of blankness or tranquility in that way.
Yes, and her calm up there and her space.
Good for her.
This here, believe it or not, which is a pink, very unusual cupboard with these glass knobs, pale pink and pale yellows and circles. They used to keep their records in here because there was always music playing. And round the corner, you can see a very highly painted radiogram.
Oh, wow.
And that's where they would play their
music.
Their records, their music. And if that wasn't being played, they would have the radio on. Watch that. Now, this is one of my favourite rooms. This is Duncan Grant's bedroom. And I'll explain why when we go in there. And it was always Duncan Grant's bedroom. It's got the biggest bed there.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of the needlepoint in here. Yeah. And the window seat there, you can see, that would have been designed by Vanessa Bell in the 1940s. And you can see how it's an antique frame, which they've reupholstered with their own needlepoint there in 3 sections.
Yeah.
But you can see the decoration in here, and this room she would come back to again and again and decorate to make sure that it was welcoming and fresh and friendly for him, to make him want to come home again to her. Vanessa was very well aware of Duncan Grant's sexuality and the relationships that he had, and accepted them, and he would go to her for advice about different lovers and that sort of thing. But there was one hiccup, and it was through this artist here. You can see a little painting there of a policeman, and that's by an artist called George Bergen. And later on in their life here, Duncan Grant decided he wanted George Bergen to move in with them, and Vanessa put her foot down. So she did occasionally put her foot down.
She didn't want the law involved.
She didn't want him, and there was a policeman actually who was a friend of theirs, who was openly gay as well. We talk about him on the Queer Tours. So, there's another whole different strand. Yeah. It's very complex, the stories here. But interesting.
And so, I mean, Vanessa must have loved Duncan and just, you know, it's not necessarily a question of tolerated, but she understood and she accepted. And it was just, do you feel that the way that they lived here, which obviously at the time was not considered, well, acceptable, I mean, it wasn't legal, do you think it influenced their creativity?
I think so, because I think it's really interesting you compare tolerating and acceptance, because they felt they accepted everyone's sexuality, their partners, whatever their views, their political views, who they were, their ethnicity. They felt they were very accepting people. Yes, I think it did affect their creativity, because there were never any sort of lines that they drew, and I'm talking sort of metaphorically here. They could do anything, and they were always very adventurous and exploratory to a certain extent, and they encouraged each other to be exactly that.
All right, well, I can hear another tour's just coming behind us now. So, Terry, thank you so much. This was amazing.
Welcome.
I've really enjoyed it.
So we were just on our way, but I've just noticed there's this group of women in this room, and I think they're doing a sort of course or something. And this place, Charleston, often does, you know, courses, craft courses, writing courses. Do you think we should interrupt them in their creative process?
Yes.
Which, of course,
You
I
know,
love that when someone does it to me.
I'm writing, please go away.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, Mum's knocking. So there's a group of people. I don't know, there's about 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people. And they're doing, I think it's a life writing course, isn't it? Okay, so it looks like we found a moment that we can interrupt. Thank you so much. I'm Jessie. Hello.
I'm Linda.
Hi. So what have you been doing today in the course?
Every Friday morning, using the Bloomsbury house or the Bloomsbury garden or the Bloomsbury writings as a text that we then use to investigate our own kind of experience of garden or home or self or others.
Well, the atmosphere
Join
is
us,
fantastic.
Jessie, join us. Yeah. Get your notepad out and join us.
I need to get some discipline back in my writing life, so maybe I should. Yeah, definitely.
You'd be very welcome. Get your tips from a professional best-selling writer while you can.
Yeah, it's the least I can do. We've interrupted you in
Go on,
your
what do you want to
flow.
ask?
How much of the story do you know when you start writing it, and how much does it evolve as you go?
For me, it's very much let's write and see what happens. I'm not a great planner. I'd love to be more structured, because it would make me feel safer or more confident in what I was doing, but I'm definitely a writer who just wants to start with a scene in her mind. That's actually what I did last night. I had this scene, this woman standing on a riverbank with a man and a turtle, and that's all I had, and then I just see what happens next, you know. And well, yeah, so yeah, I the book that you think you're going to write is never the book that ends up being written.
Great advice, thank you.
Well, I just wish you the best of luck with your own writing. It sounds absolutely fascinating what you're all doing, and yeah, what a lovely place to be doing it.
Yes.
Cake at 11 C's.
Cake, you get cake.
Cake mid-brain.
I don't get cake when I write. I need to come here. Thank you. Bye. Have a good weekend.
That's lovely,
So, last but not least, we're going to head towards the garden. Shall we have a little wander around before we meet the head gardener?
Yes, I think that's a good idea. Then we'll have some questions.
Yeah,
then.
you can tell me everything you know about gardening in
Yeah.
10
I
minutes.
can't. That's all it would take.
No.
Hi, I'm Fiona. I'm the head gardener here. Welcome to the garden.
Thank you so much. Stunning.
And do you work full time?
Oh, full time, 5 days a week, and I'm a professional gardener.
Yes.
And what I'm trying to do, I've been here for 3 years, and I'm trying to bring it back to the 1930s and 1940s, so that it truly reflects what it was like at its peak when Vanessa and Duncan were here.
And so, how do you do that?
It's been magical. When I first came, I didn't realise there were so many paintings by Vanessa, particularly Vanessa, but also Duncan, of bunches of flowers. So what they used to do was wander into the garden, randomly pick a bunch of flowers that they like the colour of or the structure of, and then they plop them into one of their vases. So you had both their ceramics and their choice of flowers. Those paintings are all out there in private collections, but you can find them on the internet.
Oh, that's lovely.
So I've
So
used that
you
as my
literally
guide.
did detective work.
Yeah.
You went and saw what the flowers were in the
Absolutely.
vases and then
Yeah.
went and planted them.
Absolutely. But then the plot got a bit thicker because I've got to get the right varieties. So it's all very well getting a zinnia, but I don't want a zinnia that's a modern sort of lime green zinnia. I want a zinnia that was around then.
Somebody would come in and say, "Oh, that's not in keeping." You know.
That's exactly why I'm digging out these Niphophia. Because somebody came in and said they didn't have yellow ones. And I
it's
said,
so
no,
annoying.
they didn't. And I was about to dig them out and you spotted them before I could.
Very good. Yes,
That's
very
what happens
good.
with my novels. They wouldn't have done that then
Well,
in
you must get that all the
1930.
time. You
Yeah, but
research so hard.
everyone's an expert, Fiona. That's the problem.
Exactly.
What are those gorgeous blue flowers?
The blue is the Salvia patens.
Oh, Salvia.
But the really key plants here are things like the zinnias.
Yeah.
And we very recently got some seed from Italy from a particular gardener over there who's managed to get hold of 1940 seed that's been collected and reproduced every year since 1940. So it's the right variety, the right density of colour, which is magic.
It makes me so happy that there are people out there in the world doing that kind of thing.
Yes,
still.
really into detail.
Yeah,
I
for
said to
sure.
this gardener, I said, you and I are the only people in the whole world that worry about whether our zinnia seed is from the 1940s or not.
So it's really more than just being the gardener. You are doing a really mammoth task.
The interesting thing is everyone thinks it's about the house and about their friends. And there's this part of the story that I feel hasn't really been told, which is they came here because of the landscape. And they came here for privacy and to be able to explore themselves in every dimension. And when you see their letters, they all talk about with enthusiasm about the garden and we picked 52 peaches this year, or we're harvesting this, that and the other, or Roger, if you're passing, do pick the last of the sweet peas.
Fiona, where are you going to take us?
Where I'd love to take you is out through the walled garden. You've seen a bit of the walled garden, but there's another bit that people might miss, which is the orchard.
Oh,
and
lovely.
That's got some apples and what have you, and then that leads to the lake.
Perfect.
So let me take you down there.
Lovely, thank you.
Does it smell at all clovey?
It smells quite...
You can see we're just putting down the wallflowers here, so it's all going to be...
Oh, God. My mum's... Come on, Linda.
Sorry about that. Got distracted there. This is Harry and this is Dylan.
Hi,
and
hello, hi.
Dylan is our volunteer and he comes in once a week on Fridays, and Harry is full-time and he's funded by the Stanley Smith Horticultural Trust.
Yeah, we've spent the morning moving an apple tree, a young apple tree, and digging up some geraniums, which we're going to split and divide and place elsewhere. And we've just sown some grass seed, and now we're making an artistic structure
Loving
to
the
cover
structure.
that, keep the pheasants away.
Yeah.
Some whistling tape. Yeah.
Oh, so when the wind blows through
Supposedly
it...
it whistles,
Oh,
yeah.
okay, that's quite clever.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you for your
Right, cheers.
time.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
This is the orchard. It has a few trees in it, quite a selection of one sample of each. So there's a mulberry and there's a walnut and there's a quince and a medlar. But and there's a few apples. But it's not a conventional orchard. It's just somewhere they enjoyed playing. It was quite informal and quite overgrown. This has got a number of statues dotted around, but this particular one I like. It's only the head and shoulders. It's a little bust, but because it's on the ground, it looks particularly odd.
Yeah, it does. He looks like he's popped out from the
Yes.
earth.
It does rather. I always think this is Bunny Garnett, David Garnett, the chap who married Vanessa's daughter Angelica. known as
that's
Bunny.
him?
And this is him.
Oh, wow.
And so I always think that perhaps if I was Vanessa, that's exactly where I would have put him in the garden. Sort of under a shrub and up to
Under a
his neck
shrub.
in soil.
Covered in ivy, in the dark.
Oh, chap.
I mean, the thing about David Garnett, he was the husband of Angelica Bell, then Garnett, but also the lover of Angelica's father.
Initially the lover,
Right.
yes. When
So
they
he
were
was-
younger, yes.
So Angelica was about 19 or so when she married,
Something like very young.
and David Garnett was 50-something.
Yes, I suppose the thing that people find difficult was that Duncan and he were true lovers. They were very, very involved with each other, and they both came here with Vanessa. And then when the baby was born, and of course Angelica is Duncan and Vanessa's baby, and so when the baby was born, he was there
Yeah,
at the birth.
That's quite
and then
intense to then
19
become
years
her
later married
husband.
him. Yeah, it's kind
it's
of
a bit
tricky
something
one.
out of a fairy tale.
Yes,
But not the easiest kind
Yes,
of plot.
Angela Carter sort of fairy tale.
Yeah. And I wonder for Angelica how that felt, like to have sort of a biological father that she only realised was her biological father when she was 17, and then this other, official father who was fairly absent most of the time. Clive Bell wasn't here that much.
Yeah.
And then to marry a man who was old enough to be her father, who had been involved with her father. I think she must have had a lot of struggle with
I think she did.
the father figure.
Yeah,
I feel.
think she really took her lifetime to come to terms with that, and that's why she wrote about it very frankly. Which I
very
think,
frankly, and because this is a beautiful place. It's a beautiful, inspiring place, but it's a blessing, and I can only assume a bit of a burden as well. Like
Yes.
the Bloomsbury legacy, it's a complicated, complex group of people.
Yeah, I think that's the key, is that they were complicated, and any attempt to simplify their lives or what their ideas were is invalid. You've really got to think about it in all its layers.
Yeah.
So we've just come back from our tour of the house and garden, and I feel at once very envious of the people who got to live here, and also very grateful that we've had this wonderful tour from
Yes.
Terry and Fiona. It was an absolutely stunning place. And I think for me, the best bit was actually seeing the garden and, talking to Fiona about her plan to bring it back to the way it was in the 30s and 40s, and the fact that seeds still exist from that time. And I just think about the way that I think it's so wonderful as a writer to have my own space and what that really means, and to curate a space where I feel both safe and secure, but also able to experiment. And I think this is what this place is, and this is what Charleston, the house and the studio there and the garden represent. It's like an idyll. I don't know whether I'd want all my husbands and lovers bothering me when I'm trying to write a novel, but each to their own, I guess. Can you imagine?
Swimming in the lake.
I know. Running around with a duck in the lake. Get out. How about you? What did you find that you enjoyed, or what was your feeling afterwards?
I thought that it was a very peaceful environment. I think that's quite key, even though there would have been things going on. So it still seems peaceful. And I loved the artwork, actually, so much. To see all that in all the rooms and related to the people who lived here, obviously, and then their choice of furniture. Few pieces of furniture, really.
Yeah, it wasn't. The rooms weren't crammed. were they?
No, but just lovely, purposeful, and beautiful.
Do you think coming today you're going to change any designs or do something based on the sort of Vanessa Bell, Duncan Grant aesthetic?
Well,
am I going to get home and find you've painted Dad's face on some plates? Or
I was contemplating the doors, actually. I thought
those doors are lovely.
Yes, they're good, aren't they? No, I think I'm too busy trying to get enough wool sorted from a Jacob and a Dorset to knit a sweater.
I have no idea what you just said, but I'm going to take your word for it.
They're those little furry things that run around the country called sheep.
Sheep. Oh, right.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, Jacob and a Dorset. You're not getting the sweater.
I don't. You want to hang out with me more, Mum?
Yes, you're so busy though.
Oh. I'd like to go with you again.
I think she said Sunday you can come free.
Yeah, you can come free with your National Art Pass on a Sunday to Charleston, which is amazing. Do you want to go to the cafe for a cup of tea?
Oh, yes, I might need that after all that chat.
Okay. Thanks for listening to Meet Me at the Museum with me, Jessie Burton.
And me, Linda, at Charleston in East Sussex.
If you liked this episode of the podcast, please rate, subscribe, or tell a friend.